Matilda was abbess of Essen Abbey from 973 to her death. As granddaughter of Holy Roman Emperor Otto the Great, she was a member of the Ludolfing dynasty and became one of the most important abbesses in the history of Essen. She was responsible for the abbey, for its buildings, its precious relics, liturgical vessels and manuscripts, its political contacts, and for commissioning translations and overseeing education. In the unreliable list of Essen abbesses from 1672, she is listed as the second abbess Matilda, and as a result, she is sometimes called Matilda too, to distinguish her from the earlier abbess of the same name, who is meant to have governed Essen Abbey from 907 to 910 but whose existence is disputed. Family and youth. Matilda belonged to the first family of the Holy Roman Empire, as the daughter of Duke Ludolf of Swabia and Ida, a daughter of Duke Hermann I of Swabia, a member of the Conradine dynasty. Her father was the eldest son of Otto I of the Ottonian or Udolfing dynasty and his Anglo-Saxon wife Eadgyth. Her brother, Otto, was Duke of Swabia from 973 and also Duke of Bavaria, from 976 until he died unexpectedly in 982. Her birth was recorded in Regino of Prum's Chronicon by a continuator before 967, possibly Adalbert, a monk of Trier, under the year 949. That same year a daughter, Matilda, was born to the king's son, Ludolf. Matilda was probably involved with the abbey from her youth, perhaps being educated and trained there from 953, or alternatively from 957. Essen Abbey, founded in 845 by Alfried, Bishop of Hildesheim and Gerswit, who became the first abbess, had been connected with the Ludolfings since its foundation. After a fire in 947, which destroyed all documents about the early history of the abbey, Abbess Hathwig had had the old rights and privileges of the abbey confirmed by Emperor Otto I and further obtained immunity and exemption, so that the abbey achieved imperial immediacy and was only spiritually subordinate to the Pope. The entrustment of a princess education to the abbey would have enhanced its prestige further, putting it on an equal footing with the abbeys of Gandersheim and Quedlinburg, as a Ludolfing house cloister. Probably it was already decided at this time that Matilda would later be abbess. This decision was probably made in 966 at the latest, when Matilda is first attested in documentary evidence, a record from the 1st of March 966, in which her grandfather granted a parcel of land to the nuns at her request. This gift probably reflects Matilda's formal entry into the order. Matilda received a comprehensive education appropriate to her status, probably from Abbess Hathwig and Abbess Ida aside from the Gospels. The books at Essen included the religious authors Prudentius, Boethius, and Alcuin, as well as secular works like Terence and other classical authors which were not only reading material but also the basis of the education of the girls entrusted to the abbey. Through these, Matilda was well prepared for her office. On the reported inscription of the Marsis shrine it was stated that she could write in Latin and had also mastered Greek to an extent. Abbess Matilda is first named in Essos as Abbess of Essen in 973. This document, issued in Aachen on 23 July 973 reads, Otto confirmed to the Essen cloister founded by Bishop Alfried, at the request of Abbess Matilda and in accordance with the advice of the Archbishop Gero and of Otto his kinsman, just as his predecessors, the free choice of abbess, the donations made by earlier lords and other believers, which were listed by name, and the property titles which were lost in the cloister fire, and immunity with the right of the abbess to choose a vote to administer justice to the people of the cloister when necessary. The individuals mentioned in this document are Emperor Otto II, and Gero, the important bishop of Cologne, to whom the Gero cross owes its name, while Otto his kinsman is Matilda's brother Otto of Swabia. At this point Matilda was about 24 years old and thus still under the age at which she could technically receive appointment as abbess. Matilda was not an abbess who remained secluded in monastic silence. In addition to travel to Aachen in 973, further trips are recorded to Aschaffenburg in 982, Heiligenstadt in 990 and 997, Dortmund, and Thor. It is also assumed that she made a trip to Mainz in 986 for her mother's funeral. In addition, she must have maintained a wide-spanning network of contacts. Art historical parallels indicate contacts in Hildesheim, Trier, and Cologne, while she acquired relics in Koblenz and Lyons and transferred land which had belonged to her mother to Einsiedeln Abbey. There she was recorded as a benefactrix and honoured with the title of Ducessa. She corresponded with the Anglo-Saxon Earl Ethelweard, who translated his chronicle into Latin for her. All these activities of Matilda functioned, above all, to fulfill the interest of her abbey and to ensure the salvation of her deceased family members. This is especially clear in Ethelweard's chronicle, in which Ethelweard places particularly emphasis on genealogical relationships, noting in the introduction the common descent of Matilda and himself from King Ethelwulf of Wessex. Politician Essen Abbey was an imperial abbey like Gandersheim and Quedlinburg, and the abbess herself came from the imperial family. Documentation that she took part in the Italian campaign of her young uncle, Otto II, like her eponymous aunt Matilda, Abbess of Quedlinburg, and her younger brother Otto is lacking. However, her involvement in the burial of her brother in the Abbey Church of St. Peter and Alexander, which had been founded in Aschaffenburg by her father, after he died in Italy in 982, is documented by an entry in a manuscript at St. Peter and Alexander. Her uncle Otto II died in Rome a year later. Otto II's fatal Italian campaign was a turning point in Matilda's life. As a result of her brother's death, she became the last member of the Swabian branch of the Ludolfing dynasty and therefore the manager of the possessions of the family. Furthermore, the death of her brother and her uncle Otto II on the campaign catapulted her to the center of imperial politics, since her cousin Henry the Wrangler, who had lost the Duchy of Bavaria to Matilda's brother Otto in 976, kidnapped Otto II's heir, the 3-year-old Otto III, and claimed the regency. Based on the absence of written evidence of Matilda's activities at this time, it was traditionally assumed that Matilda had no further political influence after the death of her brother. However, these argued that Matilda certainly did not enjoy Henry the Wrangler's favour, and that Henry's victory would have led to a reduction of imperial patronage to Essen Abbey and therefore a loss of significance for the abbey. In the donor portrait of the cross of Otto in Matilda, created at Matilda's order possibly during the crisis, Matilda is depicted standing upright in the costume of a member of the high nobility, contrary to the usual depiction of the donor as a humble worshipper in monastic costume. Therefore, it has been concluded that Matilda maintained a pronounced self-confidence and was not willing to stay out of secular matters. Matilda was also guardian of Otto III's sister Matilda at this time. What exactly Matilda did in this crisis, in which Otto II's widow Theophanu along with Otto I's widow Adelaide of Italy contested the regency with Henry, is not documented. However, the Golden Madonna came to Essen at this time, and it could be interpreted as symbolic of Theophanu's right to care for her son Otto III as Mary cared for her own royal son. In 993, when Otto III visited Essen Abbey, he donated the crown with which he was crowned king as a small child in 983. Otto III also donated a battle-worn sword of Damascus steel with a golden sheath, which served as the ceremonial sword of the abbesses of Essen and in later tradition was claimed to be the execution sword of the martyred saints Cosmas and Damian. These gifts of royal insignia, for which there are no contemporary parallels at all at other abbeys, encourage the conclusion that Otto was offering his thanks for Matilda's help in securing his rule. Matilda had already met the king in 990. On the 20th of January of that year in Heiligenstadt, Otto renewed a donation of Mathild's mother at her request and with the advice of the Arch-Chancellor Willigis. At the proposal of Archbishop Willigis and the request of Abbess Matilda of Essen, Otto renewed the donation of Rhoda which Ida, a distinguished woman, gave to the canonical order of Hillwitz House at Essen. Visits to Essen by Otto III are assumed in 984 and 986. Since in both years, there is a gap of some time between attestations of Otto in Dortmund and Duisburg. In April 997 Matilda travelled to a Hoftag of Otto at Dortmund, where Otto transferred royal property on the Upper Line to Essen Abbey. It is possible that she spent some time in Otto's court in this year, since she is mentioned as a witness in a document from Thor in September. Otto also facilitated the donation of relics, especially those of Marsis, to Essen Abbey, which became the centre of commemoration of his father in Saxony. Patron of the arts, hints of Matilda's personality emerge only from the surviving remains of her artistic patronage. Taking over the management of the assets of her family, particularly the inheritance of her grandmother Eadgyth and her mother Ida, placed Matilda in the position to freely use a considerable fortune. With this fortune Matilda financed artistic treasures to preserve the memory of her relatives and herself. The chronicle which the Anglo-Saxon historian Ethelweard dedicated to Matilda served as a memorial for her Anglo-Saxon ancestors through Eadgyth. Ethelweard records that it was at her request that he translated his Chronicon de Rebus Anglicize, a version of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, including material not found in surviving Old English versions, into Latin. This occurred after 975 and probably before 983. The text survives only in a single copy, now in the British Library, which was badly damaged in the Cotton Library fire in 1731, so that later portions are lost. Matilda probably repaid Ethelweard with a copy of Egertius, a work de re militari which was written in Essen's scriptorium and has long been in England. But Matilda is especially known for the works of goldsmithery which were made at her order or acquired for Essen Abbey by her. These include 2 jewelled crosses which she had made for the abbey, now in the Essen Cathedral treasury, both important works of Ottonian art. Both have donor portraits of her in enamel. In the first, the cross of Otto in Matilda, she appears together with her brother Otto, and in the second Matilda cross, she is represented with the Virgin and Child. A similar third Essen cross with large enamels may well also have been a product of her patronage. The earliest surviving decorative sword and the Golden Madonna of Essen, an exceptionally rare statue covered with sheet gold. Both date to her abbacy at Essen, and were either commissioned by her or given to her. A large 7-armed gilt bronze candelabrum, over 7 feet high, records Matilda's commissioning of it in an inscription. All these works remain at Essen. Matilda had an expensive chassis made as a memorial of Empress Theophanie for her son Otto II. Would have exceeded the splendor of the treasures of the churches of Cologne on its own. It is attributed to Matilda because of the reported inscription in dactylic hexameter. This collection of relics was later known as the Shrine of Marsis after the most important relics stored in it and was the oldest reliquary chassis in the empire, precursor to the Rhenish reliquary shrines, of which the best known is the Shrine of the Three Kings in Cologne. The Shrine of Marsis was made of gold and decorated with numerous gilt enamel plaques and gems. The largest of these was an image of Emperor Otto II on the backside of the shrine, which based on a depiction of the shrine in an altarpiece depicted Otto in worship and also acted as a memorial. This first large chassis was destroyed as a result of the stupidity of the abbey servants responsible for evacuation in 1794, when it was taken to be safe from French plunder. The remains were melted down, and a masterpiece of Ottonian art was irreparably lost. Matilda is probably also the donor of the more than life-size triumphal cross in the Aschaffenburg Abbey Church of St. Peter and Alexander, whose paintwork corresponds to the edging decoration of the cross of Otto and Matilda. Since Mathild's brother Otto was buried in this church, this cross was probably part of his memorial. Mathild's building program. Georg Humann, the first art historian who concerned himself with the buildings and artifacts of Essen Abbey, had ascribed the westwork of Essen Minster to Matilda, by means of stylistic comparisons. Subsequent research has affirmed this understanding. Matilda is seen as the initiator of the westwork, which since the excavation of a predecessor building in 1955 by Zimmermann had been considered mostly the work of Abbess Theophanu, who reigned 1039 to 1058. Matilda is therefore also responsible for the earliest plumbing yet found at Essen, a lead pipe which ran transversely under the westwork and throughout the abbey buildings. Such water pipes were uncommon in the early Middle Ages and only found in opulent buildings. They therefore indicate the prestige of the builder. The question of whether this was Matilda or Theophanu was uncontentious, but a change in building style did occur in this time. Had the Essen westwork, a masterpiece of Ottonian construction, first been built under Theophanu, it would have been built later than one of the masterpieces of the succeeding Romanesque style, St. Maria in Capitol in Cologne. On the other hand, Theophanu is praised for rebuilding the Essen cloister in the Brauweiler family chronicle of the Essenide family. The work carried out by Zimmermann supported the latter position, which also held that the predecessor building was completed in 965. In this case, Matilda would have actually had a new building constructed, only for it to be replaced by the modern minster. Longy drew attention to symbolism of the building program which he recognized in the plan of the westwork. The octagon is clearly influenced by Aachen Cathedral and Otto III's policy of imperial restoration. In the time of Theophanu, this system no longer made sense. This view interprets the part of the Brauweiler Chronicle which says that Theophanu had the abbey buildings renewed, as just a reference to a spiritual restoration of the community by Theophanu. A secure date for the construction of the westwork of the earlier building does not exist. The proponents of an early dating of the current building therefore also date the preceding building earlier, pointing to the fact that westworks were usually created immediately after the achievement of immunity, which Essen probably achieved before 920. In that case, the earlier westwork would have no longer been a new building when construction began under Matilda. It is also possible that both abbesses did building work on Essen Minster, since there are signs of a long-term building project. In this case, the reference in the Brauweiler Chronicle would be interpreted to indicate that Theophanu completed a construction project begun by Matilda. Theories on the foundation of the Rillinghausen Abbey. Matilda has also been identified as the founder of the Abbey of Rillinghausen, since a grave inscription was supposed to have been found in its abbey church, according to which she founded the abbey in 998 and was buried there at her request. Her foundation of Rillinghausen is challenged in newer research, since direct testimony is lacking and the grave inscription was identified as an early modern forgery. However, Rillinghausen Abbey is mentioned in Abbess Theophanus Wool of 1058 as the foundation of one of her predecessors. The abbess who reigned between Matilda and Theophanu, Sophia, a sister of Otto III, who was simultaneously abbess of Gandersheim, is unlikely to have been the founder of Rillinghausen. Sophia resided predominantly at Gandersheim and left behind only small traces at Essen. The sister abbey of Gandersheim was probably founded in the 940s, and Quedlinburg's sister abbey was definitely founded in 986, and it seems unlikely that Essen would have founded a sister abbey before these richer and more important abbeys. So the foundation of Rillinghausen before Matilda began her tenure in 971 can probably be excluded. Thus, the foundation of Rillinghausen by Matilda can clearly no longer be considered proven, but it is not impossible. Matilda and her namesake, the Abbess of Essen, is not to be confused with her younger cousin Matilda of Germany, Countess Palatine of Lotharingia, daughter of Otto II. who was entrusted to her cousin's care in the abbey at a very young age. It was intended that Matilda would stay in the abbey and become an abbess like her cousin and older sisters Adelheid I, Abbess of Quedlinburg, and Sophia I, Abbess of Gandersheim, but she was ultimately married to Etzo, Count Palatine of Lotharingia around 1000. This was despite strenuous objections by the Abbess Matilda, such that Etzo had to go to Essen to extract his bride. The marriage seems to have been designed to settle a dispute over Ottonian lands claimed by Etzo, but was apparently very happy. It produced 10 children including Theophanu, later another abbess of Essen.